Today is episode 52 and another Ask Dr. B episode.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, dears. Do you ever wonder about the heritability of ADHD or how your emotions and feelings impact your executive functioning? In fact, do you know the difference between your emotions and your feelings? If yes and no, this episode is for you. So let's dive in. Your emotions are the more primitive expressions that come from the biochemical reactions in your body, and they definitely alter your physical experience. You could equate your emotions to more primitive times when you would have needed to have quick responses to threats or rewards for survival. The amygdala, it's a part of your brain that plays a role in emotional arousal, and it regulates the release of neurotransmitters that are essential for memory consolidation, which is why emotional memories can be so much stronger and last longer than feelings do. Emotions are physical, and they can be measured by blood flow, brain activity, facial expressions, and body language. There's a lot of disagreement about how many emotions there are and which ones are actually considered our emotions. Some sources say there are 8 emotions. Other sources say there are 4 emotions. If we go with the 4 emotions, that's happiness, sadness, fear, and anger. If we go with the 8 emotions, that's trust or acceptance, anger, anticipation or interest, disgust, joy, fear, sadness, and surprise. And then there's another source that suggests that the 8 emotions are happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, disgust, shame and guilt lumped together, and jealousy and envy lumped together. I tend to lean in the direction of the 4 emotions, and I feel that some of the others listed are more feelings, not emotions. However, I'm not saying that I'm right. It's just what I'm sensing right now, and that's what I'm going to go with. There's something else that I want to share with you about emotions, and that's the 90-second rule. According to Pema Chodron, an American Tibetan Buddhist and an ordained nun, if you allow an emotion to exist for 90 seconds without judging it, it's going to disappear. And according to Jill Bolte Taylor, a neuroanatomist and author of A Brain Scientist's Personal Journey, she says, once triggered, the chemical released by your brain surges through your body and you have a physiological experience. Within 90 seconds from the original or the initial trigger, the chemical component of anger has completely dissipated from your blood and your automatic response is over. If, however, you remain angry after those 90 seconds have passed, then it's because you've chosen to let that circuit continue to run. I find it fascinating to read that all the emotions last for less than 90 seconds. And if anything continues after that, it's because you've added your own story and you've chosen to hold on to that emotion. This is where my thoughts about us being the meaning makers of our lives comes in, at least to me. If the emotion comes as it does and then departs, and I do nothing other than observe it and allow it to bring its message to me, I can move on. Or I can do something about the situation or not, as the case might be. However, if the meaning that I give to that emotion is something that hooks me and gets me attached to the emotion and the story I make up about the emotion, then I am indeed hooked. And the more often that you or I tell the story that we make up about the emotion, the stronger the connection comes, because what fires together wires together, and it's going to be more and more difficult to disconnect or break free. So instead of causing your emotions to escalate and last longer, if you simply allow them to naturally pass through and flush out, it's over. If you choose to fight the emotion, it strengthens the emotion, and you're going to end up fighting it over and over again until you don't. In fact, You may very well have given away your power to the emotion to control you when you were trying to control it. The processes that are described in the articles that I've been reading perfectly describe how I addressed my last panic attack years and years ago. I was living in Seattle, Washington, and I had to drive across one of those bridges there when that panicky sensation started. I pulled my car over to the side of the road. I got out, I put a blanket down on the ground, and I lay down on my back on the blanket, and I looked up at the sky, and I felt it was a good day to die because I just couldn't live that way anymore. I didn't die, obviously, and what happened instead was that I laid there while the emotional experience intensified to its peak, began to dissolve, and then it passed. I know that it seemed like it took forever before the experience passed, but it well could have been just 90 seconds. The point is that I had always run from that experience in the past, and so I never got to examine it up close and learn about it, what it was, how it was, everything that I could learn about it. I didn't get swallowed up that day because I surrendered to it and I allowed it to be right there with me while I learned about it firsthand. And once I knew more about it and how intense or big or whatever about it, I had something to work with instead of something to run from. By paying attention to what I was experiencing and surrendering to it, I was able to alter my response patterns and break free of any further panic episodes. What a gift that experience was. And I no longer need to be concerned about sensations like that getting a grip on me because I understand what happens and I can work with the meaning that I make of those sensations and the emotions differently. So let's transition to feelings now. Feelings originate in the neocortical regions of the brain. They're mental associations and reactions to emotions. They're subjective and they're influenced by your personal experience, beliefs, and memories. A feeling is a mental sense of what's going on in your body when you have an emotion, and it's the byproduct of your brain perceiving and assigning meaning to that emotion. Feelings happen after you have an emotion, and they involve cognitive input, which is you thinking, usually subconscious. They can't be measured precisely like emotions can. I would say that the meaning might have become subconscious. However, at one time, I believe it was a conscious meaning that we gave or you gave to the emotion that you felt. According to Dr. Antonio Damasio, who's a renowned neuroscientist who directs the USC Brain and Creativity Institute, and he's written some really interesting books that I've enjoyed over the years. He says, feelings are mental experiences of body states which arise as the brain interprets emotions, themselves physical states arising from the body's responses to external stimuli. So the order of these events is, I'm threatened, I experience fear, and I feel horror. I'm going to stick with the 4 basic emotions as I see them and tell you a little bit about them before I talk about how they impact your executive functions. First, fear. It's an emotion that experts know as withdrawal, and its function is to warn us of the presence of some danger, either of receiving harm or causing it to ourselves. It allows us to evaluate what our capacity is to face situations that we view as threatening. If we learn what fear means, then we can learn to manage our fear by attending to whatever the danger is so that we don't have to continue to experience fear. If we don't know how to address whatever the danger is, we might need to get some help from someone. The point is that rather than ignoring the message of fear and allowing fear to escalate into panic or a phobia, we can address it when it's just fear. Then there's happiness, which is an emotion that experts know as the opening emotion. This emotion helps us to create bonds with one another, and it's classified as one of the expansive emotions, next to anger. Happiness can manifest itself in many, many ways, and because it's seen as an emotion that allows us to bond with each other, it can also be linked to tenderness, sensuality, and even eroticism. If we learn to manage the emotion of happiness well, it can bring serenity and a sense of fullness. If we don't, it can bring us sadness or frustration. And then there's sadness, which is an emotion that's associated with the withdrawal group, just like fear, and it's known as the most reflexive or automatic emotion of them all. It always evokes something that's happened in the past, and its function is to help us to be conscious of a thing or a situation or a person that we've lost or long for. It also helps us to leave or to let go of something that doesn't belong to us or is bad for us. It also permits others to accompany us during a time of us being vulnerable. And then there's anger, which is the second expansive emotion. It stems from an impulse, a way to take away something or someone away from us, to get rid of what it is that bothers us, what we believe is unjust or what's doing us harm. Anger should not always be considered negative, though, because it implies an energy surge and going into action about something that needs to be accomplished because there's a threat. If we misinterpret anger, it can become a huge problem and we can actually become anger. Sometimes it can help us cleanse ourselves of things that are weighing in on us, but we have to manage it correctly. Once we're conscious of our emotions and we learn to live with them and what they actually mean, it will be much simpler to realize that they're all positives in our life because they're messages, they're information. They're not something that we're supposed to embody. According to Damasio, if you have just an emotion, you wouldn't necessarily feel it. To feel an emotion, you need to represent in the brain, in structures that are actually different from the structures that lead to the emotion or what's actually going on in the organs where you're having that emotion. It's a completely different experience. Summing up, emotions play out in your body. Feelings play out in your mind. And the process of emotions and feelings goes something like this. You have an emotionally evocative stimulus that happens. There's an emotion. Then there's a feeling. Then there's the naming of what it is. Then there's you questioning the emotion. Then there's you acting on the information the emotion is providing, or deciding not to act because the stimulus isn't valid. I know that's a mouthful and it's a long sequence, but this is basically what's happening. We need to question what we're experiencing and understand the validity of it or not. So back to what I've said to you many times before. You are the meaning maker of your life experiences. You may not have control over what emotions you experience, but you certainly have control over what feelings you experience, since your feelings are the result of the meaning that you give to your emotions. Are we okay so far? I know it's a lot. I want to spend a few minutes here talking about my thoughts on the impact of your emotions and feelings on your executive functioning. The development of your executive function begins in childhood, and it can be derailed by many, many different occurrences like family trauma, non-supportive or non-scaffolding style of teaching things to you. I feel that your executive functioning can be hugely impacted by runaway emotions, especially those that are oftentimes strong negatives like fear or anger or sadness. And if you embody them, rather than just allowing them to pass through for those 90 seconds or so, they can take root and they can become a part of you. You can become them. You can become fear or anger or sadness in such an ongoing way that it can last a lifetime. Or you can realize that you actually do have some say-so in how your emotions impact you and what it is that you decide to feel about your emotions or other things in your life. That's actually a lot of power that you have if you learn how to work with it. So today's episode continues on with answering the questions that you have about issues or challenges that you experience as an adult living with ADHD or executive function deficits, and offering you hope, real hope. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, grade free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD or executive function challenges, and 3 questions from a listener, as well as some action steps and a favorite quote of mine. But first, it's been a while since I acknowledged all of you listeners in the many places in the world that you're listening from, and I felt like doing that today. So here we go. Malaysia, Jersey, Latvia, Mauritius, Iceland, Egypt, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Trinidad and Tobago, India, Tunisia, Romania, Kenya, Israel, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, Denmark, France, Japan, New Zealand, Spain, Sri Lanka, Finland, Croatia, Mexico, Singapore, Belgium, Netherlands, Bahrain, Switzerland, Sweden, Germany, Philippines, Hungary, Norway, Ireland, South Africa, Australia, United Kingdom, Canada, and most all of the states in the United States. And I apologize for any mispronunciation of any country, because I know that I have a problem pronouncing words that I'm not familiar with. So please accept my apology. That's 42 countries plus other regions, which can't be identified from the statistics. I want to thank all of you for your loyalty, your suggestions, and your support, and for being a part of my life. And I have decided to rebrand my show because the current title, Harness Your ADHD Power, just doesn't reflect what I've been talking about since the show launched at the end of April. I received an email from a listener who offered me an alternative name for my show, and I really like it. So just as soon as I get all the little details taken care of, the new name of my show will be Living Beyond ADHD, with Dr. B, of course. The listener who suggested this name said that they felt like it offers hope, which is a big part of the work that I do. If we don't have hope, real hope, then what's the point of doing the work? Thank you so much to the listener who sent me that suggested title for the show. I really, really appreciate your input. So now, transitioning to today's 3 questions from Mario in California. First, are there any statistics on ADD being passed down from the parents? Second, are you more likely to have it if both your parents have ADD, or is it the same if only one parent has it? And how early do the symptoms start showing up in children? Thanks so much for your questions, Mario. They're great questions, and there is definitely conflicting information in the literature on the things that you've asked. What I was taught is that there's a 25% chance with one parent and a 50% chance with 2 parents, both parents having ADHD, but I've read higher and lower stats. The literature also indicates that adopted kids have a higher rate of ADHD, which again, many different reasons are given for that, such as less than optimal care during pregnancy or early childhood, trauma such as separation anxiety, or other traumas. And there's research on the biomarkers of ADHD and the information that just because genes for ADHD are present, it doesn't mean that they're going to get expressed, because genes need to get triggered in order to be expressed. According to Dr. Kenny Handelman, ADD and ADHD are very heritable, meaning that they're very genetic, and they're very genetic disorder. There's been lots of twin and family studies that have been done, and here's what some of those research outcomes indicate. If a person has ADHD, then an identical twin has a 78 to 92% chance of having ADHD as well. 25 to 35% of siblings have ADHD as well. 15 to 20% of the mothers have ADHD as well. And 25 to 30% of the fathers have ADHD as well. If a parent has ADHD, there is a 20 to 54% chance that his or her child is going to have ADHD as well. And if both parents have ADHD, According to this research, there are no research stats that are available. However, various articles state that it is a very high chance that the child is going to have ADHD as well. So, if you have ADHD and you plan on having kids, each child has about a 20 to 54% chance of having ADD or ADHD. As for just how early the symptoms of ADHD begin to show up, that's a difficult one for me to respond to, Mario. I say that because as a researcher myself for about 5 years and the principal investigator and study coordinator for a study of kids and teens with ADHD, the youngest age child that could be in the study that I facilitated was age 6. And I felt that I didn't have enough expertise with child development to clearly discern the differences between normal child development and the level of activity and the beginnings of ADHD. There are definitely kids who are so extreme in their behavioral expressions that there is absolutely no doubt that there's something outside of the norm going on. However, there are also many kids who are questionable as to whether or not their developmental path is normal for them. I found myself wanting to be extremely cautious and very clear about what was being said and expressed behaviorally before coming to any conclusions. And then there were the parents who were pretty insistent that their kids had ADHD because someone else had diagnosed them years prior. However, they definitely didn't meet the criteria for a diagnosis of ADHD when I met with them, and I did a comprehensive intake as well as extensive clinical testing for the study. In fact, when I didn't diagnose ADHD in some of the kids, the parents were upset, and they wanted to know what answers they would have needed to be giving to me in order for that diagnosis to be made. We talked about their insistence in their child meeting the diagnostic criteria, and the reasons just weren't appropriate. So I would say that I'm not the expert here on what age symptoms would start to show up in kids, because there are so many important factors to be considered in responding to that question. And I want to thank you again, Mario, for your 3 questions for today's Ask Dr. B episode. And our episode wouldn't be complete if I didn't talk about celebrating your wins, since they're such an important part of my philosophy. You can shift your feelings and your thinking by celebrating your wins. You seriously can. Since what we pay attention to grows, paying attention to what's right instead of what's wrong helps us to generate more of what's right. So celebrate them all, big and small, with a full heart of appreciation for all that is right about you and what it is that you're doing that is right. And please, don't shortchange yourself by thinking that it's pointless or it's stupid to reward yourself for things that you're supposed to do. You know, that couldn't be further from the truth. Are you really going to make yourself wait until something huge happens to celebrate? And does something huge happen every single day? Probably not. Doesn't to me. But the kind of wins I'm talking about can, and they often do. And from what I see, they're an absolute necessity to getting yourself out of the emotional ditch of whatever ails you and into a better attitude and a better way of living. And based on the feedback that I get from the students in my Adventures in Achievement program, this regular practice of celebrating their wins is changing their lives for the better. You know, each and every one of us is like a puzzle with so many pieces that need to be put together to form the picture of our life. And if we get overwhelmed by all the pieces that we see in front of us and we never put the picture together, it's a huge loss for everyone. So please, it's your responsibility to put your picture together. And if you need some help, ask someone. Ask me. So what's it going to be for you today? What are you going to celebrate? Maybe you've begun to develop a little foresight and you aren't getting hit with things at the last minute. That's certainly a win. Perhaps you've gone through a box of papers and you've been able to get rid of most of them. That's a wonderful win. Maybe you're tackling your sleep habits and working on figuring out what's driving you to stay up late at night, even when you know that you need to be going to sleep. That's definitely a win. You get the point. Celebrate them, all of them, big and small. And none of this half-hearted celebrating. You've got to mean it. Exaggerate your emotions. Yes, wow, awesome. You want your acknowledgement and your celebration to register in your neurology with the power you need to move you and shift your state. Many of us need a higher level of stimulation or intensity for things to register. So if that's you, give it to yourself and exaggerate your celebration so that you can actually feel it and it can do something for you. And listen, you're not broken, you're not defective, and you're not less than. You're you. You have gifts, you have talents that may be different from others, but they're valuable nonetheless. You are a precious human being whose value is a given. Because I'm not talking about you as the human doing that most of society views you as. And you may be missing some skills that are making your life very difficult right now. I get it. Yet skills can be learned. And you may need to make some changes. And you may be at the very, very early stages of making some of those changes. If you're willing to be a student of your own life and willing to develop a deeper understanding of yourself and how you're put together, and offer yourself a lot of compassion and patience, plus the time, effort, and energy that it's going to take to make the necessary changes, then these things will happen for you. I know this is true because my students are learning skills that they've been missing for most of their life. And it's absolutely amazing to share in the transformation of their thinking and their behaviors and the aha moments that they're sharing. Please, don't let yourself be one of the 80% of people who don't ever make it to adoption or more permanent change, or even the 80% who want to change but never actually end up making the changes that they want for many different reasons. There's training and support that's available to you to ensure, to the best of my ability, that you don't become one of the 80% who don't make it. Rather, you're one of the 20% who do. It's clear to me that there are many different points along your journey where you really need support and encouragement and accountability and whatever training and answers that you need right then and there so that you can keep going toward your goals. I definitely do not see this as a solo journey, which is why I decided to make some changes to the enrollment process for my program, Adventures in Achievement. I've repurposed the wait list so that now, as soon as you get yourself on the wait list, I'll be reaching out to you to find out what your current challenges are, what your goals are, and so that we can determine if this program is right for you. And if it is, I'm going to offer you the opportunity to enroll in the program right now at the current pricing, instead of waiting until the public relaunch of this program near the end of this year, which is going to include a price increase due to the new content about executive function that is formally being added to the program. It is a necessity. All of the current workshops and the coaching calls weave in executive functioning so that current members don't have to wait to benefit from these life-changing skills. And this could be you too. So if you're curious about whether or not Adventures in Achievement is right for you, and you don't want to have to wait to learn how to improve your executive functioning, and you want to freeze your membership costs at the lowest pricing that it's ever going to be, now is the time to act. Put your name on the wait list, and I'll call you at the number that you provide me with so that we can chat. This program is definitely the place to be if you want help understanding what's been holding you back, and you want to learn the skills to break free of your stuckness and start living the life that you've only wished for. How your brain, mind, and body works is the uniqueness of you. And if how you're put together is currently disordered, it doesn't have to stay that way. Your uniqueness doesn't have to be a limitation. It can be your strength. Once you understand you and what you need to live as your best self, it's my hope that you're going to reach out to me now and get what you need. And since this is still ADHD Awareness Month, I want to remind you about this year's International Conference on ADHD, which is being co-hosted for the very first time in history by Ada and Chad. It's really cool. That's November 9th to 12th in Atlanta, Georgia. You're going to find the links to get your tickets in the episode description and in the episode post on my website, as well as other links if you need help or you want more information. So why am I talking about this conference on my show? Especially when I haven't talked about any other events or resources on my show other than what I have created for you. I'll tell you, you never know where you're going to hear just one idea that changes the course of your life. I know that I've had many such moments when I look back on my life. Maybe your moments are at this conference. So check out all the links in the episode description and learn about this first time in history opportunity to attend the Ada and Chad co-hosted ADD conference, in case it's something that calls to you, as well as the link to the wait list to chat with me and find out if joining the Adventures in Achievement program right now is what's right for you. I don't want you to miss out on anything. A favorite quote of mine. This quote has been the fuel for much of what I've been doing for the past 5 years, and it's an anonymous quote that says, "Set a goal so big you can't achieve it until you grow into the person who can." None of the new things that I'm doing today, like live video, teaching online, or a podcast show, were possible for me 5 years ago, and they are my current reality. So, the question I have for you at this point of our journey together is, what is the big goal that you need to set so that you can grow into the person who can achieve it? And are you going to get yourself the support and the training that you need to become that person? I hope so. And perhaps Adventures in Achievement is the place to be so you can become that person with the support of our community and the training I provide and the people that are already on their way to what it is that they want to achieve because they're growing into that person. That's about it for today's episode about heritability of ADHD and executive function, emotions, and feelings. You know, it means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. I do hope that you're going to take some positive action because for things to change, you've got to change. And that means taking action. And remember, there's a PDF transcription of this episode in the resources. Plus, I would love to get to know you in the community group that I created on Facebook or in the Adventures in Achievement program. So, if you benefited from today's episode, take action now and share this show with your friends and family. You know, you can rate the show and you don't even have to write a review, or you can do both so that I know what you think of the content. Whatever you're willing to take action on today is going to ripple out into the world and impact the course of your life as well as that of other people that you may never know. And if you don't want to have to remember to look for new episodes, just subscribe and the newest episode will be in your feed by 1 a.m. Pacific time on Mondays and Thursdays. So thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.